Jenny, thanks for joining us today at the GX. Let's just jump straight in. How have you found it?
It's been an absolute pleasure. First of all, I love this place for a conference. The staging and the teams behind it have been amazing. But there's also really good energy with Gamma. And you can really see that, and we're in turbulent times, but listening to some of the talks from some of the board and that today, you can see it's a really forward-thinking company. I enjoy that. I like to hear what's coming up and what you guys are focusing on. So really good energy today. It's been great.
Great talk. Great talk.
Oh, thank you.
It felt full of a lot of challenges around the basics, and you can't help but feeling we've been at this for a while now. You think we'd be better at this, but clearly you don't find that with your experience as well. Why do you think basics are still such a big problem when it comes to security?
Because there's a lot of noise, and because it's not, although the simple messages, sort of the easiest to kind of understand, but then to forget in the busyness and in the noise of everything. And also, it's an evolving environment. It's important to remind people all the time, humans are still at the center of this. And again, that was some of the things that we heard from the guys from Gamma. It's still about the customer. It's still about the firm. It's still about the human. It's just that we're putting all this tech behind it to try and stop the amount of times it comes down to a human making a decision. Try and minimize that a little bit so that we recognize that we're fallible and we don't have to make those choices. So, I think that's why it gets forgotten. It gets forgotten because there's a lot of other things. But when we remind people, they take it on board. We just have to keep going.
Mm-hmm. So let's rewind. How did you just get into this industry? Just madness. But how did you first start?
Well, I sort of professionalized a hobby that I did with my cousins when I was a kid. We were just kind of on that fine line between kids messing about and it being kind of not really legit. And we just did what kids do. And so I was always interested in buildings. I always felt like every building's had a secret or secret passages and things. And in my professional career, I found that to be absolutely the case. So we just had a lot of experience of just messing around. But then gradually we were asked to do it more professionally by people who said, well, if you can get into any building, can you get into my house? Can you get into my office? And tell me how to stop someone else doing that who's got criminal intent. So that's really what happened. But then back in the day when I started, I don't think there was many women doing it. I don't think many people spoke about it. And it was sort of word of mouth, honestly. And that's really how it happened. But once I came out and said, look, the tech is brilliant. We need to do that. But don't forget the people. And this is how I get to them. I think what really was lovely to me was that the cyber industry and the tech industry really embraced that and said, no, we get that. We understand the message, and gave me a platform to speak about it like you guys have today. So I appreciate it. And I think that's the journey, if it really is a journey.
What's been the hardest building that you've ever had to crack?
So I can't tell you, okay. But there are buildings that are difficult to crack. Sometimes it's not what you'd expect. So there was just to be vague, there was a medical company, let's just keep it vague at that. And they had thumbprints and photographs and very specific escorts. I think they were interested in industrial espionage. That was what they were trying to prevent. And that was a particularly difficult one. But what gets in the way is professional people not being scared to just interrupt politely and say, I'm not really sure that you should be here. Give me a minute. I've had some security training. Give me a minute and let me double check. Because it's hard to get past that. But so often people are frightened to challenge, but to challenge robustly. And that's a big flaw in a lot of companies. It's all about making sure people are happy to challenge.
It feels like we've been obsessed with sort of digital security and maybe we have forgotten some of the more basic forms where we can be breached. But with us being so focused on digital security, how do you see that kind of emerging threat when we kind of blend in the physical security? It feels like you need to 100% look at it in the round and not ignore one against the other, but it's quite hard when we're so focused on modern threats. What's your take on that?
So, I'm asked about this quite a bit, and, I've sort of come around to the view that I don't think that we can ask technical teams to be all things to all people. The technical side of it and the digital threats that we face are increasingly sophisticated. They require a lot of attention. So I do think that most organisations need people whose job it is really to stay focused on the physical side and on the cultural side and the learning piece, They can work with the technical teams and with the cyber teams, but really, I think we need to stop asking people to do everything. If you've got a CISO of a complex organization, a lot on their mind, asking them to then lead an awareness program or look at the building as well might be too much. I think we need to be realistic about the amount of resource that we put into this, as you say, in the holistic way. So the more that, the more resources you can get to it, the more you assess the risk to be not just digital, but physical and human as well, the more resources that needs, really.
It kind of makes me think of the phrase that, you don't need to outrun the lion, but you just need to run quicker than everybody else when it comes to such matters. I'm really interested to know whether you absolutely resonate with that point. And then I guess the second part of the question is, if that is true, what are the things that you would recommend that we do to make sure that we are running quicker than everybody else and maybe others get preyed on, not us?
I think, there's a couple of things there. The first thing is make yourself, and I talk about this with physical security, if you're a person who goes on holiday, posts it online, leaves your windows open, leaves the key under the doormat, you're making yourself an easier target than maybe a neighbour who's more careful about what they do. But I genuinely think in industry, it's about cross business groups. It's about interest groups within industry who share ideas and share threats to the extent that it doesn't infringe on their business. The key is in that regard is to unionize a little bit, I guess, and to share ideas, because if you find it on your own, you're less resourced than if you take some advice even from competitors, So within reason and within practicality, I think we should work together. And practically speaking, it's bang the drum in an organisation. What you'll find is if you talk a little bit about social engineering to the troops, to the teams, there'll be some people who are really interested in it, and they'll be happy to sort of take that and bring those sort of security moments to team meetings. So one of the things I say, which is completely free, is that line management level at those regular meetings. We used to call it stand up and win when I was working for a big corporate. Stand up and lose, everyone used to say. And you just say one person needs to bring a security point. So it might be that, there was this phishing email, or it might be that a business that we all know is being hacked. And they bring it, they say, what does everyone think about this? And you talk for a minute or so about it. So it's got to become not a separate part of the business, not like a defined unit, but just part of the general conversation with everyone. And that'll keep the people in the loop. And then invest in the best possible tech and the best companies that support that to just, strengthen up your resources.
It's an interesting point you raised there about investing in the tech, because we often find with our customers that, there's lots out there that they can be buying to make themselves more protected, or at least make them feel more protected. And a lot of customers have brought a lot of stuff, there's lots of shiny stuff that they put into their businesses in this kind of effort to make them feel more protected, when quite often they don't actually feel more protected in anything. If anything, in the modern world, we feel less and less protected. Do you resonate with that? And what would you say to an organization to maybe give them the confidence to maybe reflect on what they've got before potentially going out and just purchasing something else new, to make sure that maybe that next best bet that they're making as a security purchase is the right one for their organization?
Definitely look at what you've already got, and definitely get the companies engaged. The companies that you've bought from, the tech that you've got. If you don't know if that's being fully functional, if you're not using it to the best that you can use it after that investment, make those companies come in and explain it to you, review. One of the things we always say is you don't necessarily. It's like I always say an analogy with buying a new suit because you've got a big, conference or something to do. Check what you've got first and make sure that it works for you, because actually buying shiny new things sometimes isn't the solution if you're not making use of what you've already got. And speaking to the vendors and the retailers and saying, is this sufficient for our needs? And that sometimes needs a cold hard look at what you've done and to say, is these legacy systems, were they ever right? Maybe they were never right. I mean, we actually need to take the plunge and invest in something new. Or it might be, don't invest in anything new, but make sure that you've been helped to get the best out of what you've got. It's about knowing where you're vulnerable, what you've got, and doing what you can with that, as opposed to just running out and just spending money all over the market and not necessarily getting what you need.
moving from the tech to the people, which was the heart. Obviously, the talk that you gave here today, I completely resonate with this. There's no patch for human stupidity, is there? But what are the things that we could do better to try and address the stupidity that's clearly inherent?
Well, we can stop calling people stupid. We can stop doing that. We can stop referring to people as the weakest link. We can say, look, we all have to acknowledge we've got weaknesses, right? Human beings don't always make the right decisions. We all know that. But let's not dwell on that. Let's say, look, we all acknowledge it. We can acknowledge it can be scary. And I don't think that we should pull back from, people say don't sell on fear, but you don't understand emotion if you do that. You can give people the full picture of how bad something can be, and people are not stupid. They can see it can be bad. The key is to say, but when this happens, if this happens, this is what you use, this is how you report it. Don't be frightened to say if you think you've seen something, and if it's nothing, if it's a false positive, that's fine. But the big thing is not to blame people if they make a mistake or if they report something that actually turns out to be very sort of benign. We've got to work with people and be honest with them. I think there's a little bit of like, it's the dark arts of security, it's black magic, it's like, you wouldn't understand. And that quote that I always say from Mitnick of like, there's no patch for human stupidity, it resonates with people because in some ways we all know that that's true. We're all daft sometimes. But I think if you're leading an organisation, you're leading a security project or a security culture, that's the worst thing you can say, because if we don't want to be nihilistic about it, we don't want to just throw our hands up and go, well, it's bound to happen. We're all daft, so let's not do anything. You still do your best, but temper it with good solutions, good communication, and a path to resolution.
I couldn't agree with you more. There's some really interesting points that you said there. Certainly the humans, stop calling humans stupid, but we do stupid things from time to time. And the bit I really liked was this whole bit of culture, and it's that if we do something that's maybe not right, don't try and cover it up. Be open with it, because obviously
and let people talk about it, but also don't focus too much on, I've seen organisations where there's an army of people talking about culture, and within the security industry, it's all about the culture and the awareness. Well, no, it's not just about that. This has got to be part of this. Is just part of business these days, is making sure everyone's aware. But it's like you said before, it's a holistic approach. It's a multi-layered approach. Let's just be sensible. Let's keep it in the conversation. Let's invest where we can and assess what we've got. And and let's trust our people, because mostly what lacks is a faith that people will do their best. Nobody wants to be hacked. No one really wants businesses to be hacked. So let's all just do our best, whatever capacity we work in.
I think one of the biggest things, certainly we always feel when we're engaging with our customers, that we want to solve for is confidence. And we want to try and give our customers as much confidence as possible, whether it be they'd asked the right questions, they'd considered the right solutions for the problem that they clearly wanted to do. We've had a massive confidence knocking series of events recently with all of the retail hacks. We covered it briefly on the stage there. You gave some great advice. If there's anybody out there that's clearly worried about that, or any sort of similar advice, what would be your mic drop things that someone out there could go away, just start doing, that's going to help them get ahead of the pack?
Well, from a team perspective, from like a normal person, like just individually, it's things like, all the basic cyber hygiene, keep all the apps up to date, make sure that you've installed all those security updates. Don't be daft about using passwords over and over again. Try and use password managers. Try and use multi-factor. But mostly it's about just being alert to the fact that we live in a world where there are lots of routes to your identity, your online identity, and your account. So just be aware of it and watch out for things like emotional stories, news events, and emails or approaches around those events. Be a bit more cautious, a bit more paranoid, but not so paranoid that you don't go online or use social media. We have to be more mindful in this age of information and scams and hacks and cons. And if in doubt, ask professionals, ask the people at work. There's a lot of free resources just for the public as well. So be informed, be mindful, don't take too many risks, and have all your cyber hygiene up to date. And then, the heavens will fall or they won't. We live in a world where these hacks do get through sometimes, The main thing is that the majority of people are good people and will help fix it and mitigate it and protect you. So that's really how I feel about it.
great advice. Certainly the be alert, because it kind of feels that sometimes your guard just drops, doesn't it? You can
I think
go
all
through...
of us these days sometimes just want to just not look at anything, just get the duvet in your head. And, you know, we can't really do that. If you want to engage in the world these days, you just have to be a bit more cautious.
Brilliant. Well, look, thanks for joining us today. I'm just going to ask you for some closing comments now, and maybe any final pearls of wisdom, any advice, apart from obviously go and buy your book, which I'm sure is ram-packed full of help and advice. Just close us off. Anything you'd just like to sort of round off, any sort of mic drop moments?
Well, I think the only thing I'd say is that, you know, some of that advice is for individuals. I think for companies, the thing I'd say about social engineering, protection, and I put it on one of my slides sometimes, is you've got to know your people better than the bad guys. We can do a lot of research from an adversarial perspective on how to get to a company, how to find the story that's going to get into one employee that opens the door into the company. But if we really get to know people and work with our people at line management level, at team level, we'll know when something's off. They'll feel confident in telling us if they're suspicious. And that really is the best way. I shouldn't know your people as a third-party actor better than the people in the business. It really is only about the humans, and that's what we focus on.
Brilliant. Well, look, thank you for joining us at GX.
It's been
really
such a pleasure.
Such a great and engaging keynote. I know that the audience loved it. So thank you very much. Thanks for joining us, Jenny.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks for inviting me.
Cheers.